back with Thinking Out Loud at WUNL. Local, I'm Raven David Channing, author of Merrimack, the leather neck with the leather lungs. And in the studio, live with us, is Barry McCarthy, the New England Organ Donor Bank from Waltham. He's a volunteer who works with the organization, and he is here to explain to us exactly what they do. Welcome to the program, Barry.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. I must say, ULowell is certainly a beautiful looking school. Graduated from here back in 1986.
Really?
I guess I'm dating myself now, Dave. Last century, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. But my daughter, Christine, she's attending here now. She's a junior, and couldn't be proud of her to be going to ULowell.
She likes it.
She loves it.
Good. That's great.
Yep.
That's great. And you're also a resident of Lowell yourself, right?
All my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I got to tell you a funny little story. When I was born in Waltham, but we lived on Lowell Street in Waltham.
There you go.
Anyway, let's get into the New England Organ Donor Bank and tell us about that.
Well, for the last 2 years, I volunteered with the New England Organ Bank, Donate Life, and I've met with a bunch of people. I hosted an event back in April. April is National Organ Donation Month, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes, so back in April, I hosted an event at Middlesex Community College, and I had brought with me some information from Donate Life, and I had some information from the various news outlets, because I donated my left kidney. As I like to say, I'm a proud kidney donor. So I had news information from like the Lowell Sun with me, talked to various students, faculty, signed up some people to become organ donors. You can go right on to registerme.org, by the way, to register. And also, as you know, you have to renew your driver's license. And you can do it right online or go down to your local registry. And there you can also sign up to become a donor. Last week, for example, my daughter had to get her driver's license. She just turned the big 2-1, Dave. You know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I went with her. I was off, and she's in line waiting, and I see Donate Life poster. So I walked right over to it, and I had a big smile on my face. And I'm like, I know this place very well, and I'm proud to be a member of Donate Life, and anybody can become a donor.
Now, you donated your kidney, you said, right?
I did, my left kidney.
And may I ask who you donated that for?
Be glad to. So my neighbor, Tim Sullivan,
Okay.
he and his family moved in across the street from my family back in 2004. As he said to me, he knew I was a good guy because I was wearing a Red Sox hat, Dave. Yes, so we had the same sports affiliation, our love for the country, so he knew I was a good guy. Hey, I have to brag, I guess. But,
Sure, go right ahead.
so anyways, Dave, Tim is also a proud member of the Navy Reserves.
Whew.
And so what had happened was late 2009, actually it was in September, late September, he hadn't been feeling well for a while. And I always knew his schedule basically. When he had Navy Reserve duty, as you know, once a week, 1 weekend a month rather, you have your commitment and you go down to Newport, Rhode Island. So anyways, I noticed his car had not moved. And Tim's always out before I am. So for a couple of weeks, I said to my wife Nancy, I said, geez, something's strange. I haven't heard from Tim. Usually he tells me when he has a trip coming with his company that he works for Raytheon, or if he has something to Navy. And so I hadn't heard anything. So early October, the typical Friday night in the McCarthy household is pizza night. So I stopped, get pizza, I'm coming home, and as I'm coming home, Tim had called my house. Now he had just come home from the hospital. We didn't know. So he told my wife he wanted to talk to me, and my wife said, what's wrong? He told him he just came home from the hospital. So my wife says, I'm coming over. So I'm coming down the street, and I see my wife walking across the street going into the Sullivan's house, Tim and his wife. And so I come in the driveway, drop the pizza off, and I tell my daughter Christine, I'm going over to the Sullivans. So I walk over, and I get to the back door, and I see Tim standing in the corner talking to my wife and his wife, and he sees me, and he says, come on in. And normally I would say to him, hey Tim, what's up? You know? And this time I walk in, I see him, and I said, what's wrong? So he takes his right index finger, Dave, and he points up to his left collarbone. So immediately, quick second, the visual here, I'm looking at it thinking, oh my God, left side, kidney, I see this white device here. I'm thinking this guy has a pacemaker. And that's my thought. And all of a sudden he says to me, it's my kidneys. Yep. And you look at him, Dave, you would never know. You think he looks just like me. Same build.
Picture of health.
Yes, exactly. And so for like the next 15 minutes, my wife and I and his wife just stood there in shock. Well, I'm listening to him. And he said to me, he did his year duty, got called to active duty. He was over in Africa for a year. And he noticed things weren't right, but, figured it was the hot, extreme heat of Africa, Came home, he had a knee surgery, and he had some problems. He thought maybe because of the knee surgery, but he didn't realize that he had problems with his kidneys. So at the end of September, he's sitting at his desk at Raytheon, and he gets a call from his doctor. Now, this is a call I would not want to get. The call from his doctor, as he told my wife and I in his kitchen, was, you're dying. You need to get to the hospital right away. We don't know why you haven't had an aneurysm. See? So he told his boss, then he called his wife, and he told her, meet me at the hospital.
So his symptoms were simply that he wasn't feeling well, is that it?
Right, frequent urination. That's the sign. That was one of the signs that was going on. He couldn't quite figure it out. Appetite was not like it is. As he told us later, had a blood test been done to test for this, they would have found it earlier than later.
Really?
Yes.
Does that imply then that he wasn't getting annual physicals?
He was. That was not the question there, but there's a blood test that's done that can test for this, and that was not done. It's unfortunate, but when he was diagnosed that night, they did a CT scan, and they found out that he had cysts on his kidneys, and he was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. And so that night, he did his will, and he told me in his kitchen, he says, my dad had that same disease, and my dad died from that. So I'm listening to him, and I'm like, just total shock. So I said to him, Tim, what needs to be done? And he looked at me and he said, the obvious, I need a kidney transplant. I had 3 to 5 years. Now picture that, Dave.
Wow.
Being told that.
Wow.
So I looked at him and I said, what's your blood test? What's your blood type? And he looked at me and he says, O positive. And I looked at him and I said, so is mine. Do you want my kidney?
Wow.
That's what I said, Dave. If Tim was here right now, he'd tell you the same exact thing. So we fast forward into October, and one morning I'm going out to my car, and I was driving my daughter to high school at the time, and he came over and he says, hey, I just want to follow up with you from when we talked in my kitchen. Did you mean what you said? And I looked at him and I said, Tim, I meant what I said. And he said, okay, I'm going to let Tufts Medical Center know. That's where he was going for his for his kidney tests. And a couple days later, he calls me up. He says, just need to know 2 things. Your date of birth, and have you ever been a patient at Tufts Medical Center? And I told him my date of birth, and I said, never been a patient. He said, okay, I'll be in touch. A couple days later, he calls me, and he says, there's an email. Tufts would like to meet with you in December. So the date was set roughly about 10 days before Christmas.
Wow.
So the date came, I took the train in from Lowell, went down to Boston, met him in the lobby at Tufts Medical Center, and as we're standing there waiting for his wife to arrive, he says to me, I can't thank you enough for being here. I've had so many people who said they want to come and help me, but when the time came, no one could help, only you. So I said, Tim, 2 is better than none. So with that, we went upstairs with his wife, and we went to a boardroom. And I met with the 2 head doctors at Tufts Medical Center for the kidney, dialysis, and high blood pressure. So in the boardroom, I still have their business cards in my wallet. So there were some interesting things I never knew. So for example, Dave, like going through grammar school, high school, you take science classes. I was always told you always had 2 kidneys, right?
Yep.
So one of the doctors said to me that that's not always the case. For example, 1 out of 500 are born with 1 kidney, don't know it.
Oh, really?
I never knew that. So they gave me an example that they had a person who came in to become a kidney donor and went through all the tests, And when they had a CT scan done, they found out this person had one kidney. Sadly, that person had to be disqualified. Another person came in to donate. They found through some blood tests that this person had cancer. Disqualified, but now that this person was found to have some type of cancer, immediately started treatment for cancer. So they do a lot of things to help you, because they look at you pretty much upside down. They look at you through a microscope, basically. As my primary care physician told me months later, you're clean as a whistle. You were looked at underneath a microscope, there's nothing wrong with you. So for me, when I was sitting there listening to these two doctors, their research goes back to the Second World War. And they found that men who had served their country, who had lost a kidney in battle, they found that these men had no problems working, their quality of life was not impacted by that, there was no change in their diet, they had children, there was no problems, no change at all. So I was, I went in there concerned too, what kind of things would be done to me.
Yeah.
Like my concern, I have a big appetite, you wouldn't know it. But if they told me, hey, instead of having 4 pancakes for Saturday morning breakfast, you can only have 2 now. I would have been like, no big deal. Because they know I have a big appetite. And, but after that, Tim's wife and I, we walked into a room, we rolled up our left sleeve and a couple tubes of blood were taken, and then I was told, you'll know in about a week. Well, Christmas came, never heard. New Year's came, didn't hear. And then my wife Nancy was saying to me, hey, have you heard anything? And I'm like, no, maybe I didn't get picked. So now, Dave, we're into the first Friday in January. I'll never forget it. My wife called me at work, and she said, did Tufts Medical just call? And I said, not yet. Why? And she said, well, they just called here. They want to speak to you. And I said, okay. And then as I'm talking, my phone light came on, and there's a message. I said to my wife, hey, I'm going to let you go. This might be them. So I checked the message, and sure enough, it was Donna from Tufts Medical. She said, please call me. So I called her, and she gets on the phone, and she says, these are words I'll never forget. She says, Mr. McCarthy, I'm calling to let you know that your blood donor test for the kidney recipient. How do you feel? Well, for a second, Dave, I sat there stunned.
Yeah.
And then I said to myself, I'm the one. That became my battle cry, Dave.
Wow.
And then I said to her, let's go.
Yeah.
That's what I had said.
Wow.
So she asked me a few more questions, and then she said, we'll send you a packet in the mail, and we'll have you come in next month. And sure enough, around Valentine's Day, that was my first visit, and I had all kinds of testing. So I emailed Tim, and I said, Tim, I just got the word. I'm a match. And he told me the following, I am delighted. I am so thrilled. You just made my weekend. He was supposed to go to duty that weekend down in Rhode Island, so he waited for me to come home. And he came over and he said, you don't know what this means to me. So then February came, and I had my first big test. So I had to go in. It was simple. People always ask me, what's the testing like? It's very, very easy. It's like you go to your doctor for your once-a-year physical.
Yeah.
You get weighed. They check your blood pressure from standing up, sitting down. They took my pulse. I'm an active guy. I've always been active. I walk, I run a lot of road races. So I pass all those tests. I had a 24-hour urine sample I had to bring in. They tested that right on the spot. I passed. Then they told me we're going to take some more blood. That was the thing they always did. Every time I went in was always blood tests. No big deal. A couple of tubes of blood. And then from there, I went over to another building. Chest X-ray. Big deal, right?
Yeah.
EKG. No problem. Next day, the doctor who was assigned to me sent me an email saying, so far everything looks great. We're just waiting for the final results to come in. We'll let you know. Sure enough, a couple of days later, I get the notification I passed. The phone call comes to me, Mr. McCarthy, you passed. We'd like to schedule you to come in March. Do you wish to continue? Again, my battle cry reply was, let's go. So March, I go in. This time my son Paul came with me. And that was the hardest test I had to do. I had to fast for 12 hours, Dave. You know how that is for me?
Yeah.
So the night before, I'm just eating everything in the house, packing it in, because I know that morning I'm not going to have coffee, and I'm not going to have breakfast. So my son and I, we take the train into Boston. He stops at the Dunkin' Donuts, and I'm like, oh my God, coffee and donuts for me, and I can't do it. We get on the subway, and I can smell popcorn. I'm like, oh my God, I'm being teased here. We get in, and I had packed with me the night before a big baggie of cookies and crackers, because I knew I was going to be starving. So I get in, I go into this room, I roll up my sleeve, and of course a couple tubes of blood, and then I had to drink the sweetest orange tasting soda. And then they started taking my blood on the hour. Well, by 12 o'clock, I was like staggering down the hallway. I'm like, I need something to eat, I'm thirsty. And as soon as they were done, I just devoured the bag of cookies and crackers. But I only had an hour. So I told my son, I said, quick, let's go down to the lobby. I think there was a Aubon pan or something. I had the biggest coffee I could get, and I devoured a sandwich. Then I had to go across the street. They did an ultrasound on my heart, because during the chest x-ray, they showed some spot on one of my arteries or something. So they wanted to just take a good look at it. And again, this is Tufts now looking out for me. And the ultrasound came back showing everything was clear. Just something on the x-ray that showed this spot. And then I was done.
Wow. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we have with us live in the studio Barry McCarthy, and he is a donor to the New England Organ Bank, and he's telling us the story of how he donated his kidney to his neighbor. This is a lot more than just giving someone a jump start to the car. This is a big thing. Now, just out of curiosity, how old are the two of you?
Right now I just turned, do I have to say it, 54?
Okay.
So, I was 48, 49 at the time. Tim was about the same. He's a little bit, maybe a year or two younger than I am. Again, we're both picture of good health.
Wow.
Yeah. So now I get the results back of my glucose tolerance test and the ultrasound. Everything was great. We'd like to have you come in April. Again, you can stop. And I said, nope, let's go. So I went in April. Now April was the last big test.
Okay.
So April, my wife came with me, and that test was, I met with a psychiatrist, and basically they asked you routine questions. Are you doing this freely on your own? Yes, I am. Are you being paid to do this? No, I'd never do it for pay. Never. Because Dave, I'll be honest, it comes from the heart.
Yep.
It does.
It has to.
Plain and simple.
Right.
You know? And I met with a social worker. They asked you questions about you and your family, passed all that. Very simple stuff. And then the last big test I had was the CT scan. And that's to see if you have two kidneys. Had that done. Then I met with my surgeon. He came in.
Well, can you stop there a moment?
Yeah.
It would seem to me that, that was one of the first things you'd do, to see if you had two kidneys.
Right, that's a good question, Dave. Because even my wife asked that question.
Yeah.
Do you think you should do that up front? But,
Yeah.
think about it. When I went in for that first time in December, rolled up my sleeve, 2 tubes of blood. Okay? Through that test, they have to make sure that Tim and I are compatible.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what those things are. But that test right there would have ruled me out, or would have meant I was a match. That's a simple blood test. But you look at that CT scan test I had to do months later, it's very costly. So between then and April, I had other tests I had to clear. A lot of it's blood tests. So they would have ruled me out had I failed, even my urine test, anything I could have been failed on. So the CT scan is the last one you do. So, yeah, pretty simple.
That is unusual.
It is. But I met with the surgeon, and he was just going over, he checked me out, and I'm a thin build. He said, you'll have no problems with the surgery. And he said, do you have any questions? And my only question I had, Dave, was, can I get to see my results?
Yeah.
So he said, sure. So he said, come on over. So my wife and I walked over, and he got on the computer. And it was pretty neat. All of a sudden, you see the image of my spine appear. And then they inject some dye. It kind of lights you up. And I could see him pointing with the mouse arrow. Okay, there's your right kidney. There's the artery. Oh, okay, there's your left kidney. And there's your other artery. And my wife and I are standing there behind him. We're giving each other a high five. Because Dave, I had 2 kidneys. And I was like, sweet. So I looked at him, I said, looks good, right? And he
Yeah.
said, yeah, it does. So that night I came home, we walked over to Tim's house, and I said, Tim, great news, I got 2 kidneys. So a couple of weeks later, I got another letter in the mail. We like to schedule the surgery. May 31 was the date. So I was excited. So I went on to the postal website, and they have one of those change of address forms.
Mhm.
And this was the cheer up Tim. And I filled it out. On the left side I said left kidney, I used my address, and the new address was Tim's address. And I said, Tim, just getting things ready. And also, to use a simple baseball analogy, when I was going through all my testing,
Mm-hmm.
I used to say to him, Tim, I made it to first base, I'm a donor. I made it to second base with those tests I had back in February. I said, me getting to third base will be the testing and imaging of my kidneys and check out the plumbing, but me getting to home plate is you getting my kidney.
Mm.
And he knew what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
Like for another example, when I had my blood work done back in February, my cholesterol was looked at.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 10 pages of testing I have.
My gosh.
8 pages were just on my blood testing. I passed everything. So one of the things was my cholesterol. It was borderline, but they said that was fine. So jokingly I said to Tim, you know, Tim, I'm going to get me Scott Boras to represent my organ donation here. He's going to represent me. He knew what that meant. Scott Boras is the big sports agent for all these baseball stars.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I said, he's going to represent me now. It's going to cost you a banana split at Kimball's. And he said, I accept those terms, not a problem at all. So he knew I was kidding around. But I did it to just cheer him up.
I know Kimball's well.
Oh, do I ever? Once a year. My sister Caroline takes me there for my birthday, and let me tell you, it's a Kimball's banana split for me. But anyways, so the date came, May 31st. That morning, Tim and his wife, and my wife and I, the 4 of us drove in. I admit, I was a nervous wreck, but on the way in, Tim has a great sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So on the way in, it was just the 4 of us talking. We get in at 6:30. We signed in, and then immediately we're called in to change from our street clothes we had on to put on these 2 Johnnies and a shower cap, as Tim called it. He called it his camo, using his Navy talk, you know, and he put on these slippers. And then he was led down to a room. I didn't think I'd see him. A couple minutes later, the nurse came down, called me. I was led down, and next thing I know, we're in the same area. There's a surgical prep room.
Yep.
We're side by side. I think it was my wife and his wife drew the curtain back so we could talk amongst ourselves. He's being worked on by his team. I'm being worked on by my team. And every time they'd come in, they'd say, what's your name? What are you here for? Kind of got tired of saying it.
Let me ask a few dumb questions. You're both in the same room?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Holy smokes.
Oh, yeah,
So it goes straight from you, straight to him.
yeah,
Bingo.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's in the prep room.
Oh, okay.
That's not the surgery. That's not the operating room.
Oh, okay.
No, there were 2 separate operating rooms,
Okay.
because you have to. My surgery was at 7:30, his surgery was at 8:30.
Wow.
So I went in first, and I remember the last thing I remember before whatever they gave to me in that holding area. I remember seeing operating number 4, and they brought me in, and I just conked out. And then next thing I know, I wake up, and I hear a nurse off to my left saying, Mr. McCarthy, if you can hear me, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being off the charts with the worst pain, how do you feel? And I'm coming to, you know, you're in that fog, you know, and I'm like, 3. And I felt that great, Dave. Like
Really?
I'm talking to you.
Really?
I really did. And my right, I could see the clock on the wall, and I could see the time was about 11:30.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told to allow up to 5 hours. So I knew it was 4 hours, but I figured I must have been here for a while.
Uh-huh.
And I'm pumping my right arm like this, you know, like Ray Bork. You know, remember Ray
Yeah,
Bork?
yeah,
The
yeah.
Bruins, he'd score a goal, he'd pump that right arm. And I'm doing that saying, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hit the home run. And so I was brought back to my room. Of course, I probably fell asleep. And then later that afternoon, Tim's surgeon came into my room.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him standing there saying to me with a big smile, how are you? And I told him. Then he looked at me, and Dave, this is what I remember. He said, Mr. McCarthy, I want to let you know that your kidney is working like a racehorse inside of Tim.
Wow.
He's responding well. Everything looks good. His organs are waking up.
Wow.
It's good. And that's when I realized life is good. I did it.
Now, this was, how long ago?
May 31st, 2011. It seems like yesterday.
Yeah.
It does. You know, we all have anniversaries, and
Yeah.
birthdays we all
Mhm.
look back on. That day is now part of my life. As my family's birthdays and anniversaries, it's there. Every time that comes around, I always remember exactly 6:30 that morning, 7:30 that morning, what went on.
So you and Jim must have quite a celebration together, huh?
Yes, we did. So about a week before the surgery, Tim came over to me and he said, hey, if you don't mind, my surgeon, he wants us to reach out to the press. There's not enough out there in the public about kidney donation. And he said, if you don't mind, I'll reach out. I said, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting at my work, I sit at desk at work the next day, and I get an email that says, what are you doing tonight? So I'm reading it, and all of a sudden, Fox News wanted to come over and interview us. And so at the end of the day, we decided, well, you know what, let's do it after the kidney transplant is done, it'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. But by that time, things had happened with Fox News. They had, who was that big gangster guy they arrested? He was on the run there for so many, Whitey.
There you go.
Thanks to Whitey, you know, so our chance on Fox News ended. I didn't think anything more of it. So while we're at home, Tim called me and he said, hey, the little son wants to come over.
Uh-huh.
They want to do a story on us. I was like, okay. So they came over and they did a story, and then they said, we'll let you know when it's going to be in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
That Saturday, it was the last Saturday in June, I remember. Newspaper comes to the door, I open up, get the newspaper, and I look, and oh my God, I'm on the front page of the Little Sun with my neighbor, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So the next day, Sunday, Tim was having a cookout at his house.
Mm-hmm.
And he invited up 3 of his fellow Navy chiefs from the Rhode Island base. So Tim comes over to me and he says, hey, what are you doing today at 4? And I said, well, I'm going to be at your house. He said, besides that? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, New England Cable News is coming over. They're going to interview us. So we were on TV that night being interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, none of the stuff, Dave, I expected. During the cookout, one of the head chiefs that was there, he said to me, Barry, we voted on to have you become a Navy chief.
Oh, really?
We'd like to have a ceremony for you in August.
That is a great story. We've had Barry McCarthy in the studio with us, and he donated a kidney to the New England Organ Bank. It's been a wonderful, wonderful interview, Barry, and I'm sure there's a lot more that you could say about the New England Organ Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to invite you right now for a second appearance, and we can talk about some other aspects of the New England Organ Bank. But thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for giving your kidney to a veteran. We love that.
Yes.
And
Register.
Yeah.
Go on to registerme.org.
Right.
You could do that.
There's a lot more we can talk about with this, but we'll do that on another show. But thank you very much for coming in.
Appreciate it.
You're listening to Thinking Out Loud at WUML Lowell. I'm Raven David Tierney, the mouth of the Merrimack, the leather neck with the leather lungs. And we're going to take a break here. We're going to play our long piece that we normally play at the end of the program to while we escort Barry back to his automobile. Thank you for listening to Thinking Out Loud.